This week's parsha is the dramatic encounter between Yehudah and Yosef. We all know the story. This is just before Yosef discloses his identity, and Binyamin was brought down at Yosef's insistence, and ensconced by Yosef, and now Yehudah steps forward, challenges Yosef, ready to die to redeem his brother. And at that point, Yosef discloses his identity, and the brothers are reunited, and the whole story, as we're all very familiar. Now, the Haftarah that we read every Shabbos is always a reflection of the same theme of the parsha. Just to remind you why we read the Haftarah and when it came into being, just very briefly. The reading of the Haftarah was enacted by the sages during a time when the ruling authorities, the Babylonians, had forbade the public reading of the Torah itself, the 5 books, Chamisha Chumshei Torah. So in its place, the sages enacted, will at least read from the prophets, which the authorities did not deem to be such a threat. But then after the decree was rescinded, the custom remained, and now we read both from the Torah itself and from the books of the prophets. So what do we read in the Haftarah this Shabbos? So in the same way that the parsha, it's the Yehudah and Yosef reconciled, the brothers reconciled. So too the Haftarah is the famous Haftarah as follows. Hashem tells the Navi Yecheskel, who lived sometime more than 100 years after the exile of the northern 10 tribes. You remember that after the death of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, his son Rehoboam succeeded him, and already the end of Shlomo HaMelech's life, he taxed the people heavily. The people were complaining, and Rehoboam said, my father ruled with a heavy hand. You'll wait to see what I will do. And he taxed them further, and the result of that, a rebellion was created, and a breakaway led by a man called Yerovam ben Nevat, and the Jewish people were divided into 2 kingdoms for centuries. The northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And the northern kingdom were the 10 tribes, and the southern kingdom were the tribes of Yehudah primarily, and Binyamin. And the northern kingdom was conquered, invaded by the Assyrians, and taken into exile. Now they refer to today as the lost 10 tribes. So this is 100 years after this happened. And Hashem tells the Navi Yecheskel as follows. V'ato ben Adam, and you, son of man, take a stick of wood, a branch, and write on it, on this 8, write on it, Yehudah. And then take another stick and write on it Yosef. Why Yosef? Because the northern kingdom was dominated by Yosef's children. Who had Ephraim and Manasseh. The kings came from Ephraim and Manasseh. They were the largest in population, and they were the ruling class. So the northern kingdom is called the kingdom of, it's called many names. It's called Israel, or Ephraim, or even Yosef. Hashem tells him, take these 2 sticks, and they'll become one in your hand. And what is this symbolic? Hashem is telling him the reunification of the Jewish people, and Moshiach will come. The 10 tribes will be identified. There are millions of people out there that are Jews who don't know. Mother to child. And they'll be reunited as one people, reflecting the parsha, Yosef and Binyamin reconciled. These are the descendants at the end of days, end of exile, which is about to happen. Then who will be their king forever? Yehudah. Moshiach was a descendant of Yehudah through David HaMelech, will be their king forever. To read the pasuk, V'avdi David Melech Alehem, my servant David, meaning David's descendant, Moshiach will be their servant. V'roya echad yeh lekulam. Actually, the pasuk mentions it. After mentions it twice. There's another pasuk here. Avdi. But you have a David later on. But David Avdi Nasi Lahem La'ilam, and David, my servant, will be the leader forever. So that's the connection to the parsha. So we note as follows. We note that in our parsha, although the themes are similar, reconciliation, but who is the king? Who has the upper hand? In the parsha, it's Yosef. Yosef the king, and Yehudah surrenders to Yosef's authority. At the end of days, it's the opposite. They're reunited, but who is the king? The eternal king Moshiach, a descendant of David HaMelech, of Yehudah. So the question is why? And what does it mean, and what's the message for us? And we might ask, just in asking our question, two like sub-questions. Why indeed is the final Redeemer going to be? This is our question basically. Why is the final Redeemer going to be from David HaMelech and not from Yosef? Yosef was the original leader. Why not at the end? They're all going to come back, do teshuvah. So why can't the Moshiach come from Yosef? The Emma says there is. The Gemara says there's two Moshiachs. Moshiach the son of Yosef, Moshiach ben David. Moshiach ben Yosef precedes Moshiach ben David. He dies, and then Moshiach ben David is the final king. Whatever that means, but at the end of the day, the final one is only from the royal house of David HaMelech, tracing back to Yehudah. And the question is why? Since initially it was Yosef was all the dreams and all these parshas, but Yosef is the leader. So friends, we're going to explain this on a deeper level, and as it applies to us in a very personal way. What do Yosef and David represent? So there's I'll read to you the famous debate brought down in the Gemara in Kedushin, actually it's in two places. And this is what the Gemara says. Kedushin daf mem amad beis. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Tarfon and the elders had gathered in the attic in Lud of Beis Nisseh, it's called Nisseh. And the question was placed before them, what's greater? Talmud Gadol or Maaseh Gadol? Is learning greater or is action greater? Rabbi Tarfon said action is greater. Rabbi Akiva said learning is greater. All of them then said, in typical Talmudic fashion, reconciling both, greater is learning Talmud Gadol, Shat Talmud maybe the day Maaseh, because learning brings to action. If you learn, you'll have both virtues. Let's understand this. The question is very simple, basically. Wherein lies the emphasis? What's the greater virtue? Where should one place one's greatest effort? In doing or in studying? In learning? Very simple question. Tzedakah, which is symbolic of all mitzvahs, or sitting in kollel and learning? That's the simple meaning of the debate. We're going to go deeper. And we're going to explain how the two positions are presented by Yosef on the one hand and Yehudah on the other. Listen carefully. I'll tell you at the outset, Yosef represents the Torah study and Yehudah action. How so? Let's look at their names. Because their names, the meaning of their names reflects their content. Yosef means to add. Why was he called Yosef? Just to remind you of the story, because when Rachel gave birth to him, and they were already what? She was her 11th child, the 11th child born to Yaakov. And everybody knew he was going to have 12 tribes. So she hoped that Hashem will add another child, and she will have the final 12th child. And this way, she'll have at least 2 children, because Leah had 6, and the other ones had 2 each. That's 10. She already had Yosef as 11. And now she's hoping that she had Binyamin and she died in childbirth, but she had the 12th child. Bottom line, Yosef means Yosef Hashem li ben acher. May Hashem give me another child. So the word Yosef means to add. Yosef. Yehudah, why was he called? He called Yehudah, Leah, because when he was born, I will admit, I will thank Hashem, because they all assumed that because they have 4 wives, they would all have 3 children, 3 each, 4 times 3, 12. When she had Yehudah the 4th, she ended up having 6. But when she had the 4th, she says, Apam Oides Hashem, now I'm going to thank God. I got more than I deserve. Surrender. Thank you. Modeh ani, Haidah. Yehudah from the word surrender. Add, surrender. Let's probe further. What's the nature of learning? The nature of intellect is to constantly inquire and expand and expand and expand. One insight leads to another question. Just look at Torah. Torah is expanding every day, friends, every day, as we are talking right now in hundreds of yeshivas throughout the world. People are learning and discovering new insights in the thousands daily. And the ever-expanding Torah, oral law, that's the nature of intellect. Intellect is always asking why, what's behind this, and connecting, etc. So Yosef, which means to add, is symbolic of the world of the mind. Now the truth is the world of the mind, that's the human condition. What makes us human is intelligence, to question, to inquire, to probe. Yehud, which means to submit or surrender, represents action. Why? Because you can do an act, I'll give you several reasons. You can do an act that is not reflective of what you really feel or think, but out of an act of surrender. You can be forced to do something that is not you. No one can change the way you think, the way you understand, unless you embrace it. With all of the surrender in the world, you can't change the way you understand something. But if you surrender, you can do the act. So Yehudah, which means surrender, bittul, is symbolic of an action, and an action is not necessarily reflective of what I feel or what I understand. Right now, I don't want to do this. Let's use it in mitzvah. But I surrender to Hashem, Kabbalah's oil. I surrender and I do the mitzvah. Do I even understand it? Do I even feel like it? Not necessarily, but I have the choice to surrender. So I'm trying to convey how the idea of Yehudah to surrender is, where is surrender within the person? Action. Again, because you can do something that's completely contrary to the way you understand, the way you feel. Yosef is the way you understand. You're adding, inquiring, questioning. Furthermore, every time we do an act, really, it's an act of surrender. Why? Because the human condition, before you do, wait a minute, maybe there's another way. The human condition, there's always other perspectives. So we actually implement something. What are you doing? You're putting aside, okay, enough of the debates. We came to a decision. We're doing it. Every act for the human being's got to be stop the rumination, stop the theory, stop the analysis, and let's actually do it. So why? Because the human nature is, wait a second, maybe there's a better way, and it's endless. So actually, to end up doing something, it's an act of surrender. It's a famous story of one of, I think it was the mental Haradoker, who was Simchas Torah at night, and they're waiting for him to come out to say Hakafas. Pretty sure it was a mental Haradoker. And they're waiting and waiting and waiting. It's not coming out. So the Rebbe was there, and he went into the room and said, Rebbe, what? So he said to him that he was thinking about Atareis, and he had a new insight and a new insight and a new insight, and he was not ending. He didn't want to come out till he had. Now the Rebbe said it's never going to end, so you just have to surrender and say the words. Vayaskein ab, because the depth is endless. The new idea, the fresh perspective, and so on. Conclusion. Yosef represents analysis, study, appreciation, and Yehudah, bittul, surrender, action. For those who are familiar, Yehudah is the attribute of Malchus, and Malchus is surrender, action. Now the debate. What's greater? Learning or action? What do we see? In the parsha, it's learning. Yosef is superior, Yehudah surrendered. But in the Haftarah, it's the opposite. Yehudah, Avdi David, Melech Aleim Leilam, he is the enduring king, and Yosef surrenders. So what do we see here? So friends, everybody knows our relationship with Hashem is a marriage. The giving of the Torah is the betrothal, that's the engagement, the Eidusin, and the Nisuyin, the actual unity and oneness, the Chuppah, which is the house, and the Yichud, which follows the Chuppah, where Chas and Kala, Ish v'Isha become one, in essence, that's a Moshiach will come. Moshiach will come is the culmination of the marriage between us and the Eibishter. Matan Torah, given the Torah is the Kiddushin or the Eidusin, we call it the betrothal, but the Nisuyin, that is a Moshiach will come. So we see there's two stages. In the initial stage, stage one, the engagement leading up to the union, Yosef is superior. At the end, it's Yehudah. What does this mean? What does this mean? Why am I going to marry this person? The approach initially can't be, whatever you say, surrender. Halachically, even in an arranged marriage, the halacha is, the chosin has to see the kala before, and the kala has to see the chosin. It's one of the reasons why he covers it, because first he sees it, then he can cover it. This is one of the reasons. Just to make sure that he sees it, then covers it. You cannot marry someone just on blind faith. And of course, you have to meet and get to know each other. That's the Yosef thing. You got to ask questions. Even before you go out, you got to ask questions. Who is this person? Do the inquiry, the family. That's the Yosef thing. It's got to start with Yosef. It's got to start with a background check. Does it make sense? They've got to see each other. And if they have Yosef, then comes Yehudah, then surrender and commit. But what starts it all? What starts it all? The Yehudah model. That's the dating, that's the engagement, that's got to be based on cheshbonos, on calculations, on reasons. It's got to make sense. And then you finally come to a decision, we're going for it. So then Yehudah. But first Yosef. Then when Moshiach comes, now we're going to have to explain this now a little bit. Listen carefully, it's so beautiful. Who is what? Who dominates Klal Yisrael forever? What defines our relationship with Hashem forever? It's Yehudah, which is not learning, but Maisa action. But wait a second, now we've got a big problem. The one I was saying, okay, so now it's surrender. It's honey, whatever you want, I'm yours. There's no second guessing. There's no analysis. Doesn't have to make sense to me. Yehudah, bitl boydani. You know, this is a joke. Mercher used to say. So gesund. He wakes up in the morning. Yeah, dear. You know, every word was English. Yeah, yes, dear. That's how he finishes davening, and that's the whole day begins. Yeah, dear. Moidani. Very nice, but the question is this, Gewalt, what's the question? What's the whole? Yemais Moshiach is all about learning. So what are we going to do then? Actually, the doing of the mitzvahs ultimately, they're not going to be the way they are now, because the emphasis then is knowing Hashem. In the words of the Rambam, the pursuit of the whole world will be nothing other than to know God. So wait a second, on the contrary, now it's more action, then it's the Yosef, then it's learning. Just a quick second, I'll let this person in. So why is it, how could we say that then when Moshiach will come, it's Va'avdi David, which represents action and surrender, when then it's all about learning? So the answer, friends, is as follows. Of course, then the whole pursuit of the whole world will be to understand deeper and deeper and deeper. However, The whole understanding is going to be a Yehudah kind of understanding. What does that mean? Means as follows, using the model of a marriage. When we are dating to find out, to make the decision whether to marry or not, then it has to be pure intellect, emotion. Does it make sense to me? I don't just intellectually, emotionally. It's got to be selfish. I need to understand. I need to see that this is good for me. I need to understand you. We have to have a discussion. We have to talk, a background check. Who are you? Parents, you know, what do you like with your friends? I mean, before you go out, there's a whole research. And then, of course, in the dating itself, you have to get to know the person. And it's got to be, why get to know? Because if it doesn't make sense to me, then thank you very much. Not meant to be. You know, we part ways and no hard feelings. But the whole relationship in the leading up to the kiddushin, to the eris, into the engagement has to be selfish. Why are you not somebody else? Because you fulfill me. This is what I'm looking for. Intellectually, emotionally, physically, whatever it is, all of it. But then when it comes to the nisuyin, we made the decision, we're going to get married. So now what? We don't understand each other anymore. It's, honey, whatever you say, imagine the scene. She says to him, listen, I go to the store, I want you to buy me this and this. And she starts to explain to him why she likes this. He says, don't you have to tell me, it's okay. You want it, I get it. She's, I want to explain to you. No, it's okay. Honey, whatever you say, I'll do with complete Mesiras Nefesh, devotion. You don't have to explain. And she wants to explain it to him. So should he listen and understand? Of course. Why? Because it's her explanation. Not because if he doesn't agree, he's not getting it, because it's your explanation. Let me explain what I mean. When Moshiach will come, which is the ultimate, that's the marriage, mamish, the nisuyin, the chuppah, the yichud. Are we going to learn then? Sure, we're going to learn. Much more than before. But what's going to be the virtue of the learning then? Not, it makes sense to me, this is beautiful, and therefore I'm motivated. I'm understanding it because you want me to understand. Because it's your Torah. Because it's your reasons. It's a Yehudah kind of learning. Very different from the dating. In other words, in a person's journey in Yiddishkeit, this is the way it works. My first inspiration is, this is beautiful, it makes sense to me. I want to learn more, another question, another answer. I got questions, now I got answers. Fantastic. But that's the introduction, that's the beginning at stage one. In the ultimate connection, it's, of course you learn and understand, but not because if I don't get an answer, then I'm not interested, I'm going to look somewhere else. I understand because it's, you want me to understand you. You want me that my mind should be filled with you. You want that I should connect with you, not just with surrender, with my heart, with my mind. So therefore I understand that we discuss and deeper. But why? Because it's you. The explanations are beautiful, not because of the explanations, because they're your explanations. We're just coming from Hanukkah. This was really the Hanukkah of the Greeks. They didn't mind Yidden should learn Torah. It's a beautiful philosophy. But Torah secha, your Torah. That's why we're excited about this, because it's yours. So the ultimate marriage is, yes, we appreciate and deepen each other and get to know each other more and more. But what's the virtue of that? Your mind, your heart, and everything that I'm enjoying and experiencing about you, because it's you. Somebody else has it better, I'm not interested. It's not you. So this is, therefore, Moshiach will come. Who is Moshiach? Dafke from Yehudah. Does that mean there's no learning? On the contrary, the whole Yemais Mashiach is a molar, it's Deus Hashem. But the beauty, the whole beauty, the truth, the answer is, the beautiful truth is, the learning is in the greatest and deepest level. But what's all the understanding? Not that I need to have an answer, but because it's your Torah and you want me to know you with my mind and with my heart. Therefore, I learn and I understand. But it's all based on a complete and absolute surrender to you, the privilege to be connected to you. So in summary, there's two models. Model one, Yosef dominates. He's the king. Model two, the final model, when Moshiach comes, which is the marriage, it's Yehudah. The first model is still the marriage. The reason we're connected is I'm marrying you because I have good reason. You fulfill me. You make sense to be my partner in life. I did my research. We went out and we like each other. So I love you means I love, if there is love, whatever that means, but I love what you do for me. And here I love you is because of you. It's Yehudah. So again, so what the lesson is, I hope we're clear. The lesson is that now that we're standing at a Moshiach, we're holding, we didn't get to the actual marriage yet. We're on the eve of it. We're Erev Geula. Chassidus came along. Was revealed at this time before Moshiach comes. And it means that now the learning of Torah and the experience and the answers and the beauty of all of it is all a Yehudah relationship. Not, it's because it makes sense to me, that's why I do it. And that's why I'm motivated. I understand it more, so I've got a bigger geschmack. No. My whole understanding and my whole is because you want me to understand you. Why? Because you want to be part of my mind and my heart. David wants to be part of every part of me. So understand me, feel me. That's why I learn. That's why I understand, because you want to be part of my life. And because I have the privilege to be connected to you and serve you, because that's what you want. So there is the learning, there is the experience, there are the enjoyment and the pleasure and the explanations intellectually, emotionally that make sense. But its virtue and beauty is because it's all you. Hope that was clear. So that explains that in the Chumash, in the parsha, Yosef dominates, and in the end it is Yehudah. And that's what the Gemara says. So we'll go back to the Gemara. So the Gemara says they were debating Rabbi Taf and Rabbi Akiva. At the end, he said, I want to add one thing, that great is Gadol Limud Shalei V'dei Maisa. Great is learning because it brings to action. In the end, you'll make your decision. You'll have the action. But I wanted to add that Chassidus says that whole debate is in Golus. But when Moshiach comes, all agree, Asiyah Le'ela. This is from the Zohar. Asiyah Le'ela, action, period, is paramount. That's Yehudah. The learning itself is with the absolute bittul. Because it's all you. Because that's what you want. So this whole debate is in Zman HaGolus. But L'Asid Lavoi, all agree, Asiyah Le'ela. And as we explained now, the action is paramount. That means the action, the Yehudah, the bittul permeates the surrender, and the devotion permeates our rich experience and understanding and feeling, because the whole experience and understanding and feeling is because that's your desire to connect to me, mind and heart, in every level of my experience. Okay, friends?